At the risk of starting early and perhaps risking finishing early, we'll go ahead and gavel this meeting to order. I've been asked by several people what time we intend to finish, and the answer is in the least amount of time in order to take a testimony from all present. So we'll try to keep this moving. My name is Mike Slack, and I chair the Committee on Public Comment of the Judicial Compensation Commission, and I'd like to ask Mr. Slayton to call the roll, please.
Roman Chavez.
Here.
Harold Jenkins.
Here.
Michael Slack.
Here.
All the members of the committee are present, and I want to call the rest of the members of the commission to see who else is here. Tommy Harwell.
Here.
Cruz Hernandez.
Here.
Patrick Mizell. Paul Philippi. Linda Russell. And Bill Strawn.
Thank you, Mr. Slayton. I'd like to start by asking the commissioners, beginning with Mr. Harwell and moving this direction, to introduce themselves to you by name, their business or professional affiliation, and where they're from, so you have some idea of who we are, and then we'll get about our business after that.
I'm retired. I work for a very large pharmaceutical company for more years than I can think, but so now I have a couple of little construction companies from El Paso.
Harold Jenkins. I'm from Irving, Texas. Small business owner up there in Irving. Married, have one son. I've been on the board about 3 years now.
And David, I want you to introduce yourself and explain your role with the commission.
Sure. My name is David Slayton. I am the newly appointed Administrative Director of the Office of Court Administration, and the Office of Court Administration statutorily provides support to the Judicial Compensation Commission.
Cruz Hernandez, Burleson, Texas. I'm retired from Tarrant County Government.
Thank you. Roman Chavez. I'm also retired from the Houston Police Department and currently re-employed with the Lone Star College Police Department, former board member for T-Close, and now current board member. I've just recently been appointed. Thank you.
And I'm Mike Slack. I'm from Austin. I'm in private practice with a firm called Slack & Davis. And with those introductions, thanks to everyone for being here today. This is one of two committees that the Commission has created preparatory to preparing its report for this biennium. This Commission is in its third biennium after being created in 2007, I believe it was. We have issued 2 prior reports, and both of those reports are available on the Internet, and I trust that many of you have seen our prior reports, and especially our most recent report. The Commission has met previously in order to begin its work for this biennium. And in April, I believe I can't remember exactly what month it wasn't April, but at our previous meeting, I know our chairman, Mr. Strawn, and other commissioners had expressed concern that in 2 prior bienniums we had yet to have a judicial compensation bill filed and advanced to committee hearing. And it is something that the Commission has noted and of concern to the Commission. This Commission is an advisory commission, can only make recommendations, and it's incumbent upon the legislature, if the legislature decides to act, to initiate legislation and ultimately to consider that legislation and vote on that legislation. And so we commissioners are keenly interested this time in seeing progress in advancing our recommendations. We understand the Commission is very aware of the fact that we're in a climate of fiscal difficulty, and that judicial pay raises may not be something that some elected members may want to deal with against competing resources and limited resources. However, we as commissioners have collectively expressed our feelings to each other in our prior meeting that we believe this is a valuable resource, and that the investment made in our resource gives back to the taxpayer and the public what we put into it. Those are my background comments. If any of the other commissioners would like to make comments before we begin with public testimony, I'd certainly welcome to do so. All right. Let me begin, and so as not to create a problem for myself as a practicing attorney by failing to call the appropriate witness first in order of judicial hierarchy, I'm just going to say these cards were randomly shuffled and handed to me. Obviously, I know many of you practice in your courts. Most recently, Judge Evans will acknowledge he and I are trading places. I was in his court yesterday, and he is in our commission meeting today, and thank you, Judge, for being here. I'd like to ask Judge Stone to come forward and give our first presentation.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Catherine Stone, and I am the Chief Justice of the Fourth Court of Appeals, which sits in San Antonio. I am also about halfway through a 2-year term as the Chair of the Council of Chief Justices of the state of Texas. As a little bit of further background, I will tell you that I have served on the Court of Appeals in San Antonio since March of 1994. Today, there are a number of Court of Appeals judges who are here and a Chief Justice. If they would just stand so you could recognize that there are a good number of appellate judges and some trial judges. If they could stand, I would appreciate that. And I thank them all for their support and their interest. And I thank the Commission. I have read your reports, and I do thank you, and I thank you for the comments you've expressed this morning as far as your commitment. So my comments this morning will be very brief. Appellate judges, like any other working individuals, would like to enjoy the benefits of an increase in pay, an increase that would at least keep up with the cost of living. I don't believe that any appellate justice wants an increase in pay at the expense of other items that are of significance, but we do need an increase in pay and, very importantly, a protection of retirement and health benefits for those of us who work within the judicial system. While the judges of Texas have endured the reality of no pay raises since 2005, in recent years we have experienced increased cost and decreased benefits for both retirement and health insurance. And so I might say to you that if depressed salaries for judges is the kind of awful medicine we have to take, at least sugarcoat it with benefits that are appropriate to the work that we do. There are two brief areas of discussion that I would like to address. First, some facts about Texas judicial salaries, which I won't go into very much. I'm sure you know them. Our last pay raise was effective December of 2005, and if no pay raise is authorized in this upcoming legislative session, then by the end of the biennium, it'll be just shy of 10 years since the last raise for judges. I am unaware of other employees who have gone such a length of time. The current salary levels for Texas judges put Texas salaries at the bottom of the 6 most populous states in the union. Issues that arise from those few facts that I've just gone through, well, I think we would all agree in this room that a strong and qualified independent judiciary is vital to a civilized and balanced government, and that in order to attract qualified candidates and retain experienced judges, adequate judicial compensation is essential. And I know that there are naysayers who say we are in tough economic times and that there are many lawyers who would step up to the plate to become a judge or who the governor could appoint to become a judge. And I have two responses to that. First, just because any lawyer will step up to the plate doesn't mean any lawyer is good enough, and just good enough is not good enough in Texas. Excellence is what we need to strive for, and we need excellent candidates, we need excellent judges, and we need a continuity, I believe, in the judiciary, because every time a judge leaves a court, there is a learning curve, there is downtime, and it is a real cost to the citizens and the taxpayers of our state to have a revolving door. Adequate compensation is one way to put a stop to the revolving door. You have heard in the past from various judges who have left the bench, primarily because of financial woes. The one continuing element that we hear about is the inability of judges to financially maintain their families in the way that they need to. Most recently, the experience that I'm familiar with is in Eastland, where one of the judges on the Eastland Court of Appeals left because he has a young family. He returned to private practice, to the practice of oil and gas law, and reportedly immediately tripled his salary. A new judge was not appointed for some time, and the court operated with just 2 justices. Another judge was appointed not too long ago. He did not win the election in the primary, and the result for the people in that district is a backlog that has developed, a learning curve that has to be addressed. On a personal note, I will tell you again, I have served on the court for 18 years. I have enjoyed thoroughly every single day of my job. But excluding the $2,500 or so that I get as Chief Justice, I have received just 3 raises in 18 years. With the second raise that I received, which was in 1999, my annual salary then, the day that I received that raise, was still $8,000 below the national average for intermediate appellate court judges. Thankfully, I have received longevity pay in the last 2 years. I am grateful for that and the stability that it offers. However, I could not have remained on the court for 18 years if I did not have a husband who earns the income that he earns. I am personally familiar with the often cited reason for judges leaving the bench, and that is an inability to provide adequate funding, particularly for college education for children. As a result of my career choice and our financial choices, I will soon, with two of our youngest sons graduating, I will soon face the reality of how not to become a casualty in the student loan bubble. And this is the most often cited reason that I have heard for judges leaving the bench, is an inability to really provide for their family as they should. In 2004, then State Comptroller Carol Keaton Strayhorn said, serving as a justice on a state appellate court should be the pinnacle of a distinguished legal career, not a financial penalty. And I wholeheartedly agree with that sentiment. I'm very grateful, and I speak for all the judges of the state, I am very grateful for the work that you are doing. And of course, I wish you much success in the work that you are doing. And if there is any way that the judges can help, we are always willing to do so. I'm open for questions if you are interested.
Thank you, Judge. I'll probably ask several of the witnesses this question, and in anticipation of that, feel free to go ahead and volunteer the answers during your prepared remarks. Is there anything that we did not address in our prior report that you feel like that the Commission should undertake this time? How do you feel about the completeness and the thoroughness of the report?
I will say that I felt it was complete. You looked at other states. You looked at even states such as New York that was had their legislation and their constitutional challenge. So I feel like everything was addressed. And if there is anything additional, it is perhaps, I don't know how you would measure, but the cost of judges leaving courts, I do think that's a real cost, and I don't know what measurement tools one could employ to address that.
That's a very good point. It's one that we have discussed in the prior to bienniums, and I think that perhaps we should undertake to try to measure that cost and perhaps even make it specific to the empirical data in Texas in terms of longevity and so forth. So maybe we can develop we can ask the data committee to help harness that information. I think we did this to them last time, too, if I recall. Judge, I'd like to ask also, are there any recommendations upon which you, and this, of course, this question is to everyone, prior recommendations upon which you disagree or would say, I think you're a little bit, out of bounds there, because we are certainly, we're attempting to, present a report that certainly has political efficacy this time around.
I cannot think of anything just off the top of my head. I thought it was a very good report, the last two that I've read. I cannot think of anything.
Great. Well, I thank you very much for you coming today, for your offer of help, and hopefully you can stay with us, and if we have any follow-up questions. Any other commissioners have questions?
I just have a comment. I agree with you because I know that in Tarrant County we lose a lot of good judges because of the salary. Just got a few of them, I think, a couple of years ago that left because of salary for their children, and definitely that's one of my very concerns, that I would like to see your salary increased by all means.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. We appreciate it very much.
You're welcome.
In keeping with my promise of randomness, Judge Snipes, could you please come forward?
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
I'm Mike Snipes. I'm the judge for Criminal District Court number 7. It's a felony district court in Dallas. I'm also a specialized Veterans Court judge, and I'm actually here in many ways at the behest of the presiding judge, Judge Ovard, because I told him that I'm not running again next time, and it's exactly the reasons that were previously testified about. I've got kids I got to pay for their college educations, and I can't afford to be a judge anymore. And the significant distinction for me from other judges is that I'm the presiding judge for a Veterans Court judge that I founded in May of 2010. That was the second court in the state after Judge Carter in Houston. The Veterans Court has the mission of rehabilitating soldiers, seamen, airmen, Marines that have come back from Iraq or Afghanistan. These are real problems that they're having with post-traumatic stress disorder, traumatic brain injury, and so forth, and it is causing commission of crimes. And what we do in our court is we get them an opportunity to rebuild their lives. We've been very successful on it, had several graduates. We get them integrated into the VA. I'm a retired Army Reserve Colonel. I was in Iraq. I know what it's like over there. I'm a West Point graduate. I'm also was a federal prosecutor, so I will have 35 years of public service. That's what my passion is, and that's going to be gone because I don't really feel like I have a choice. So the issue with that, in particular on my Veterans Court, is I have tremendous amounts of institutional knowledge. In fact, I'm meeting tomorrow with General Shinseki, who's the director of the VA. I was his legal advisor, and that'll all be gone. I'm not saying that the Veterans Court will necessarily no longer exist, but I don't think it will exist in the effective way that it does now. And my reasons for leaving are the ones that the previous witness testified about. I've got to take care of my kids.
Judge, if the commission were to adopt baseline salary recommendations as they did in the previous report, which would have taken, which would have resulted in, for district court judge level, a 5% increase. Would that be enough of a difference? And not to pick on you in your personal circumstances, but do you believe that that would be enough of a difference to materially affect decisions of persons like yourself, similarly situated?
Well, I don't think that's enough, but 5% is a lot better than nothing, I can tell you that.
Right. Obviously, the question about measuring the effect of the departure of a judge and the cost, though, cannot take into account the judicial experience, or in your case, the background that you bring to that position. Because obviously, it sounds like that you have a combination of skill sets going back to your West Point days, federal prosecutor, military service, that lend themselves very uniquely to you being a Veterans Court judge. So I don't know that we can ever measure that in dollars, but when a person with your skill set cannot continue to serve for financial reasons, that poses to me a very, very serious concern. Again, going back to the excellence, we need the best people in the particular court that they're willing to serve in, and I commend you, but it's upsetting to me to hear that the skill set is not going to be around. So.
And the Veterans Court jobs are not jobs we get any extra money for. I do it because I love those kids. The benefit that because of my prior service, they can't say that I don't have credibility. I've been there. I know what's going on. I've led those same kids, and another judge that doesn't have that kind of experience wouldn't be able to say that.
Commissioners, any further questions for Judge Snipes?
Thank you for letting me testify.
Judge. Judge Woodward, he's just about to sit down when I called his name.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Ben Woodward. I am a district judge in San Angelo, Texas, out in West Texas. I appreciate you all taking your time to come here and listen to us. I addressed you all 2 years ago, and my remarks today will be quite similar. But I want to emphasize a theme that you're beginning to hear, and that is the experience that you want on the court and the kind of people that you want to have on the court. The judiciary has different rules that we have to play by. When I say different, I mean different from the legislators, different from the executive branch, and different from private practice of law. Those differences, we want people to respect the law. We are a government of law and not of dictators or military regimes. And to respect the law, they've got to have confidence that the judges have ruled on the basis of the law and not some outside influence. That takes some sacrifice on the part of the judges. The canons of ethics that we are governed by say that I cannot have a business that would interfere with my practice as a judge. I cannot have business associations with attorneys. I cannot have business associations with companies or people who will appear before me frequently. And I cannot comment on cases outside the courtroom and other canons of ethics that we have to follow. All of those canons are set up so that not only will we guarantee to the public that we make the right decisions based on the law, but it is perceived that we are doing so. As a result of that, you're asking people who have experience in practice. Hopefully, I had 20 years of private practice experience. In those 20 years, I developed a pretty good clientele, a pretty good group of people. And they were loyal to me, and I was loyal to them. And when I became judge, one of the senior judges in San Angelo told me, those loyal clients will now become loyal to somebody else. You can't do this for 4 years and stop and go back and pick up where you left off. Those clients are gone. So I gave up a 20-year inventory. I owned a title company with my partners in the law firm. Because they appeared in my court frequently, I couldn't keep that title company. I had to sell it. We owned the building we operated in, as well as the title company and some other rental properties. I had to sell those because I couldn't do business with my former partners. I was on the board of directors of a large health system in San Angelo. Every criminal case I've done since then, we order restitution to that emergency room for an assault. So I couldn't be on that system board. Not to mention it would take away too much time. Now, I gave up those things, and I knowingly did that. I knew what I was doing. And I was happy to do that because I believe in our system of justice, and I'm willing to do that. But everybody else, these other judges in the room have done similar things. So when the legislature starts thinking about giving us raises, they come from a little different perspective. They don't recognize that we don't compete in the same business world as they do. And we don't have those opportunities like they do. So they don't always recognize these drawbacks that we have. And they don't recognize that the salary, we're pretty much dependent on them. And it's sort of an agreement that we have, underlying agreement in our Constitution. You guys pass the laws, the legislature tells us what the laws are, we'll apply the laws and we'll follow it. You guys tax, you bring in the revenues, we don't do that. It'd be pretty bad if we said we need a pay raise, so we'll just fine everybody an extra $1,000 this week and take the money. We don't do that. But we're dependent on the legislature to recognize that as guardians of the law, they are guardians of the judicial, and they need to compensate us well. So my remarks are that judges take a financial sacrifice when they become judge. I believe your report showed that at least 40% of the people that went on the bench did so and gave up some financial other income sources when they did it. That's a pretty good sacrifice, but that's a lot of people that don't do that. And I think there were 50 or 60% say they wouldn't do it. They want to be a judge, but they wouldn't give that up to do it. So I wonder how you're going to be able to replace people like me and the other judges in the courtroom. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Woodward. Any questions from the commission?
Just one comment. I think that's something we could stress even more than we did in the last one, and that might start help us quantifying some of the losses. Yes, that people are giving up and why. I think that could be stated a lot more adamantly, I guess is a word.
I agree. I think we can do a better job of at least getting that in the bold print section of the report. So, thank you for your time and comments. Appreciate your service. Before I ask for another witness, do we have representatives, anybody here from the governor's office this morning? We do? Okay. And what about legislative, any elected members' offices, chairs, or anybody? Okay. Thank you. Judge Langmeyers.
Good morning. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to come before you. My name is Liz Langmeyers, and I'm privileged to serve as a justice on the 5th District Court of Appeals. And more particularly, I'm privileged to serve as chair of the Judicial section of the State Bar of Texas. In that capacity, I have the opportunity to work with our generally 1,000 members of our section, all of whom are judges in various capacities in various jurisdictions in Texas. And I want to tell you that they really appreciate the very hard work you have done and continue to do in addressing the issues of judicial compensation. So part of what I want to do is thank you for this hard work and for the excellent reports, which the judges pay great attention to, as you might imagine, and thank you very much for that hard work. I hear from a lot of judges, and you'll hear from a lot of judges from time to time. And I will say that we all certainly recognize the difficult economic times. We all know that, and we're all addressing that in our personal lives, and everybody has to deal with those issues. So the judges are not coming before you or the legislature ignorant of that or suggesting that everyone is not suffering. So we certainly do recognize that people are losing jobs and facing very troubled times. Nevertheless, as you recognize more than any others outside the judiciary, going for what will be 8 years in trying to obtain a pay raise with the reports and the information that you have presented is a very difficult position for people to be in trying to recruit and retain good judges. My personal background is that I practiced law for about 28 years, and then I've served as a Court of Appeals justice for a little over 8 years. And So I appreciate what the previous judges have said about the investment you have and really the great significance clients have in your life, and you want to continue to represent them and work with them, but you want to become a judge, and you walk away from that. You give that up knowingly. Everybody understands that. And going through this process, you cannot expect, if you go back to private practice, to pick up where you left off or to go back into that, and you divorce yourself from that presence. It also takes a while. There's a learning curve, of course, when all of you have experienced that in your personal lives with your business backgrounds and your job responsibilities, that there is a learning curve. And when you go on the bench, it takes a while to learn that job. If somebody new comes on the bench, that person needs to learn the job. And as we lose people, we lose not just their great experience and background. Judge Snipes just spoke to you about his choice. We're about to lose him and all of his background. You lose that background and their dedication to public service, and then you're in a position of making sure you have an excellent replacement. So as you have recognized in your reports, we're looking for recruiting the best people and keeping the best people. So I think we all love public service. We all appreciate the opportunity to serve. We love the state of Texas and everything we get to do, but we do believe that 8 years, which would be, if we were allowed to pay change this time, is a very long time to wait, and we would appreciate that opportunity. As to the questions you asked us to think about, when you asked about anything that we might be critical of in your reports, I can't think of anything. I thought they were very, very thorough and exhaustive, and appreciate all of that hard work in looking at comparisons with what's occurring in other states. I do think the addition, to the extent you can quantify, and I gather you, sir, are going to be one of the people trying to quantify that, so I wish you good luck. But I do think it will be difficult to quantify the effect on the public of having the members of the judiciary leave the bench and then training new people and having them come up to speed. But I do think that is a big issue in what the public may not have available. And, of course, one of the most significant constitutional rights we have for citizens is access to the courts and being able to go before a jury and have their rights determined. And I know we're all very, very serious about assuring that those constitutional rights are preserved and that the branch of government that is represented by the judiciary is adequately funded and those people in those positions receive a reasonable salary.
You know, Judge, we've all made reference to the context that we're in, which are tough economic times. I've had the privilege of being in courts, certainly in Dallas courts, where those economic times were reflected on the docket. The foreclosure dockets and things like that. It seems to me that we are just, there may be an attitude of dismissiveness sometimes that we'll deal with judge salaries later, but I think that my perception is that that's exactly the time we need our best judges in place. I watched one of your colleagues in Dallas work through a very, very long and challenging foreclosure docket one afternoon, thinking there was a skill set involved in managing that in order to keep his docket on schedule, but managing in a way that was very efficient but very fair. And I get concerned when I hear the troubled times excuse used as a reason not to compensate judges, because that's probably the most acute time for judges to be responsive to the public. If you and any of the other judges have particular experiences as a result of serving, dealing with dockets, dealing with the blend of cases that are the product of tough economic times, I would appreciate those observations.
Well, I certainly would defer to the several trial court judges that are here to talk about managing their dockets. But I will tell you, as an appellate court justice, and then also anecdotally in talking to my colleagues, everything you've just said is exactly right. And as you know, every dispute, everything that comes before every court is hugely significant. It represents, in most cases, a personal tragedy for those individuals who have waited for their day in court, for their opportunity to be heard, for their opportunity to have those disputes resolved, or perhaps whether or not they'll be incarcerated or what their punishment is. These are all enormous things. You may look at it from the outside and say, well, this is only a minor dispute because of a jurisdictional issue. But of course, to those folks, that is the most important thing in their lives. And then, of course, you have people on the bench who are deciding what will happen to someone else's children. Now, is there anything more significant that you can put somebody on the bench to decide? And then you have other judges, Judge Snipes, who was here before you as a district court felony judge. Obviously, those felony convictions with a range of punishment that can be determined, capital punishment, you want to have the best person in that job you possibly can. And as we have worse economic times, you see the escalating dockets that a lot of those judges face, and you don't want to be in a position where it becomes harder for them to manage the dockets, or the person that is managing those dockets is not as expert as they need to be to assure that each person who may have a foreclosure dispute, each person who may have a credit card dispute on a very long docket is dealt with appropriately and sufficiently to assure that justice has been done.
Thank you, Judge. Commissioners?
I've got one stupid question. I'm probably the only person in the room that doesn't know the answer. But in the transition...
If I don't know the answer, then there are two of us in the room.
When a judge resigns or decides to leave the bench and there's a transition, there's usually some semblance of time that it takes to get a replacement named and on board, and then the learning curve or what happens to the cases that are before and pending? Do they go to other judges, or they just put kind of in abeyance till the new person comes on? I mean, because that to me is another stick that says, hey, look, that's a cost. Somebody's paying that cost somehow. What happens?
That is a cost, and I'll let the judges who come after me address that specifically as to their courts, but I think probably a little of both of those things happen. It's not at all a stupid question. I think it is a major challenge. Some of the cases may wait for a new judge. In other cases, there may be a visiting judge who comes in. In many instances, the other judges who are already dealing with congested dockets and trying to get cases heard may take over. But, you know, it's kind of an interesting concept and not foreign to any of us when you think about it. There are just so many slots for hearings. There are just so many cases that can be heard. And if you lose a judge and the other judges are trying to make that up, there really aren't just limitless amounts of slots for them. So even if you take up some of the slack by having associate judges or visiting judges take up some of the hearings, and you have other judges willing to take on some of the cases, you're going to have problems. And those problems show up in statistics, but the real way they show up is in the human lives and the people who don't get their disputes before a judge, and they don't get their disputes resolved, and those obviously can't show up in statistics, but the disappointment, the inability to have timely disposition of their disputes, and frankly disappointment in the judicial system as a whole.
Thank you, Judge Langmeyer.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
In view of Commissioner Harwell's question, I'm going to deviate from the random calling and ask Judge Evans to come forward.
Thank you. I wouldn't have to cry all over Liz. That's to her benefit. Mr. Harwell, I'm going to attempt to address your question in my remarks. I think maybe I had anticipated it. There's a real cost to our communities, our citizens, and our businesses when you have judges who lack ability, talent, motivation, or experience. That real cost is in the pocketbooks of the litigants. It's in the capital that is tied up in the business community that can't be used, and in the uncertainty that exists in their lives. It is impossible to plan around litigation when it is a company-ending case, a divorce, or anything of that nature. My background is in civil litigation. My background in education is in business, and my court is a civil court with no family or criminal docket. When cases transition in that environment, depending on their complexity, litigation is often delayed for an exponential factor times the period of vacancy. If a trial judge comes into a complex case, it may take hours, weeks to become up to snuff. All the while, repetitive fees, redundancy, and litigation costs are going to the business. Decisions can't be made and capital can't be done. You know, if we're going to have trial judges need to be problem solvers. They don't need to make problems. It's a real issue. They have to be active in the docket management. They have to understand the impact of the case on the litigants before them, regardless of their specialized area. And of course, we have some wonderful judges here, general jurisdiction judges, and I don't know how they keep all of those balls in the air at one time. But for me, I look at it, what is the cost of inefficiency in this court to the people who have cases before me? You know, to attract and retain talented and experienced and motivated judges, I think you're going to have a fair base pay with predictable methods to increase it without significant legislative action. And then you have to have an earlier longevity kicker, because there is a point at which the judge realizes that although they love public service, there is a cost here that they have to measure out in their own personal life. By way of background, I left Texas A&M in '71 on active duty with the United States Army and resigned my commission 5 years later when the Army gave me some great choices about additional time or pleasant places to go visit again. But I returned home to Texas for one reason. I'm a fourth generation judge. I'm the third generation to sit on the district bench in Tarrant County. I wanted to go into practice to earn the credentials that would be respected by the bar and by the governor's office. After that service, I wanted to serve on the judiciary. And I believe I was able to accomplish that. I was board certified in 2 areas. I served in numerous bar positions, and local and state. And I had a great practice and wonderful partners. But when the opportunity came to serve, I wanted to return to public service. And my wife and I sat down with our financial advisors, and we looked at the cost and where our children were in college. And I was 55. And I knew what I could do and what it would take for me to serve. I'm now 62, and I've got built-in military credits that go with my service, of course, as this. But I find myself at this time looking at the pay scale and looking at the compensation and the lack of longevity kickers and wondering if I owe it to my wife and I to go back. Because as I told some of the other judges this morning, I know now how not to take a dog of a case. I thank you for your time and your interest in this matter. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you, Judge Evans. Judge Shepard. Let me state it's good to be back in Austin. However infrequently it occurs, it's good to see you.
Good to see you as well. Thank you very much, and I'm thankful to be asked to be here today. Let me follow Judge Evans' example and get right to the point. There are a number of things that we do as trial court judges that we might lose if, in fact, we don't stay on the bench for any length of time. My name is Eric Shepard. I'm the judge of County Court of Law number 2. I was elected to the bench in 2006 and started serving in 2007. Since that time, I have been able to do some things that I think have helped our courts be a part of the community and do some things that address the hard economic times. When hard economic times come, you made a good point. Divorces go up, crime goes up, all kinds of things go up, more and more debt cases. We've added about 10,000 to 12,000 cases to my docket each and every year. Travis County is a little different in that we have a central docket, but those cases are very real, and we try and get them out the door. One of the things that happens when you're a county court law judge is that you see hard economic times in forcible entry and detainer cases. More and more people are coming before you who are being kicked out of their homes, and that's a tough situation to be in. It's tough on the judge, it's tough on the people in the homes. But one of the things that we were able to do was work with the volunteer legal services here in Travis County, and Judge Phillips and I were able to get some representation for those people. So at least we knew that if we had to take them out of their homes, that was what was happening. But that took about 2 years to do, and took a long time to get done. Whether or not that program's continued, if I leave the bench, or Judge Phillips, who is on the bench now and is about ready to retire, he may decide to retire. Part of his retirement was based on the 401k hit he had earlier and what he has to do to make that back up. Those are things you have to consider. One of the things that we have to do, because we do so much with pro se litigants in my court, we have to remind them, we have to give them some hope that the system works for them. And so with the money of the cases that I get are cases that are debt cases. And when they first came to the court, they didn't answer the lawsuit. And if they did answer the lawsuit, they didn't answer the summary judgment. And so one of the things that we instituted was to give them 2 weeks, whether they had answered the summary judgment or not. Because they just showed up at court with a piece of paper saying it told me to be here. And so we told them, look, you got 2 weeks, you have to do it in writing, and you have to do it. And most of the time, they were just saying, look, I can't afford to do it now. The shock on the faces of the lawyers when we said, no, you have 2 weeks, was a little bit much. But at this point in time, they've all realized that it makes the system and gives the system some credibility. It says, this is a system where you can come, you can be heard, and as Judge Evans pointed out, trial lawyers are problem solvers, and that's what we needed to do. And they look at the system now as at least a place where they were heard, and they were able to make their side of the case, and then they can go forward from there. And that's another thing that we have to do and you have to deal with. When you have a 94% occupancy rate in Travis County, those cases are only going to get more and more often. But it's not only that. Travis County happens to be one of those places where we're looking to build and need to build a new courthouse. So for the next 6 to 7 years, even though we probably will need to, many of you know that Travis County is growing by leaps and bounds. We're the fastest growing metropolitan statistical area in the country. People are coming here, whether we like it or not. My father's whole neighborhood is from California. And so is he, actually. So kind of like, hi, Dad. And living right down the street, which I'm really grateful for. People are coming right and left, and that means we have more and more to do. The district courts in our county also have more to do, and there's no more room in the 80-year-old courthouse we have to put another court anywhere. And so part of what Judge Phillips and I have done is say, look, if you have leftovers, if you have things that you need us to do, we'll sit as district courts and we take those courts. We've recently agreed to take family law cases, which my staff is not all that thrilled about. But we are here to serve. We're public servants. and we're problem solvers. And so what we're trying to do is make sure that anybody who wants to come to court and have their day in court will get their day in court, and they will get it quickly and on time. And that's some of the things that we have to do, and we will be looking forward to doing, because between now and the 6 to 7 years it takes to build a courthouse, we're not going to get another court. And we're going to have to step up, and everybody's going to have to be a part of the civil court system in order to solve all the problems that need to be solved in the civil court system. And so while I thank you very much for you taking a strong look, for listening to me, probably the baby court judge here, but I add one other thing. Most people talk about their children. And while I have great nieces and nephews, I don't have any of those, but I have 2 parents, which my brother lovingly sent to me. And yesterday my father celebrated his 77th birthday. Taking care of them is something I'm concerned about. I worry about it a little bit. And the older he gets and the more they get, it's something you got to think about. So thank you for doing this. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for thinking about us. We appreciate it greatly.
Thank you, Judge Shepard. Commissioners, any questions or comments? Judge Smith.
Good morning.
Good morning. Let me make sure everybody understands. Contrary to his youthful appearance, Judge Smith actually mentored me as a young lawyer.
Oh, yeah. Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Judge. Nice to see you again. My name is Craig Smith, and I just greatly appreciate the opportunity to be back here visiting with you again. I am the president of the Texas Association of District Judges. And on behalf of all 449 of the state district judges in Texas, I just want to thank you all very much for the sacrifice you're making, for the time you're putting in, and that you're expending on this extremely important issue and this great public service for the state of Texas. And we all have the same goals. We want a stable, high quality, which includes an experienced judiciary. And 2 years ago, we were all together over at the Law Center. We were talking about this very same issue, and we were testifying. And from all your hard work and the studies and the testimony you received, you produced just a wonderful, wonderful report and recommendation in October of 2010. But because of the politics and because of the fiscal matters, it was just never put on the front burner and with the legislature, and none of us pushed it very hard. But the net effect of it, and what you've heard in other contexts, is the can's just been kicked down the road, and the problems have just gotten worse, and the costs have even gotten larger. And I was here. I'm from Dallas County, and I was going to talk to you about Mike Snipes, but I couldn't possibly say it any better than he expressed his position to you. So I'm going to take it from another angle. All 449 judges, they're Republicans, we're Democrats, men, women, Caucasians, African Americans, Hispanic, Latinos, and this is a unique group because we all agree on this issue. We're all on the same page, and we're all interested in this issue, and we are grassroots. We are grassroots on this issue. We're in every district in every county in this state. These judges have personal relationships with your representatives, with the senators, with all these people in the legislature, and we're going to work real hard to help support anything that this commission recommends and wishes to present. I don't know who the sponsors will be. I don't know. I think we lacked sponsors last year, in fact, and we've got to take that step. But I will tell you, we are here and ready for the grassroots. We will do all we can, and I just want to be here to tell you how much we appreciate all your work. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. Commissioner. Thank you. Thank you. Judge Trotter.
Good morning, members of the commission. My name is Stacy Trotter. I'm from Odessa.
At the present time, I'm a practicing attorney, but I'm the former judge of the 244th District Court in Ector County, which is a court of general jurisdiction. I appreciate the opportunity to be here to address you today. I was actually requested by my regional presiding administrative judge, Judge Rucker, to be here, and he assured me that was not in order, but he thought it would be helpful for you to understand my predicament because I'm actually a casualty of the judicial compensation system. Just to give you a little background, my road to the judiciary began in the summer of 2004. My predecessor was a gentleman by the name of Gary Watkins. He was actually a former state representative for our district. He was battling cancer for some time. It caught up with him with a vengeance, and he passed away in July of 2004. It being a general election year, it allowed the parties to nominate candidates to be on the ballot to replace him and to fill that position. I applied with 7 others for the Republican nomination. The Democratic Party also appointed a nominee. Went through the process, was appointed by the party to be on the ballot. Then I sought appointment from the governor's office to serve as the judge in the interim until the general election, which I was fortunate enough that he did appoint me. Then I went through the electoral process, which I can't say that I necessarily enjoyed, but I did enjoy prevailing. That was about the only thing I can say that was pleasant about the experience. It was an unexpired term. I had to file again for a full term a year later. I was unopposed and served another full term and filed for another full term after that, was unopposed, and ironically I resigned 2 weeks after my second full term commenced. I resigned in January of 2011. When I decided to seek this position, I had worked at a law firm in Odessa for a little over 20 years doing civil defense litigation, and when I approached my wife about the vacancy and applying for it, her first question to me was, why? And I explained to her that I'd had an interest in public service and I'd always admired the judiciary, and we have a wonderful judiciary in West Texas, and I wanted to be part of it. And her next question to me was, well, how much does it pay? Quite honestly, at that time, I did not know. So I got on the website, found out what the salary for a state district judge was at that time, which I believe was $100,800 from the state, plus you received a small county supplement. When I told her what that was, she asked me if I was crazy, because that was substantially less than what I was earning as my compensation package at the firm that I was working for. We sat down, as Judge Evans has explained. We also sat down with our financial advisor, and I had saved over the years, during the 20 years that I'd worked, and I truly believed that my savings would be adequate enough to supplement my family's income, because I assured my wife and I assured my children that I would not allow them to suffer because of my choice to seek a position with the judiciary. I obviously miscalculated. My wife has never to this day said, I told you so, although she certainly could have. But I held true to my word, and there came a time, and for several months before I decided that I would resign, I struggled with how much further can I go? How much longer can I hold on? And I could not allow myself just to be busted and walk away. I have 2 children, ages 24 and 22. At the time that I was sworn in, one was in high school, one was in junior high. They had both. One of them has graduated from college, the other is still in college. So for 2 years running, I had 2 children in college. And it was more than I anticipated. It was just very difficult to live on the salary that the state provided and the small supplement that the county provided. And also knowing that there was no raise in sight, it really didn't leave me much choice but to resign. When I announced my resignation, there were 9 local attorneys that contacted me and expressed an interest in succeeding to that position. There were a couple of them that, in my view, I didn't believe they were capable of the position, and I did, as professionally as I could, try to dissuade them from applying. But each one of them asked me why I chose to run, why I chose to seek the position, and what the pay was, what the benefits were. And
every one of them, with the exception of one, said, "Why would I want to work in this position? I'm making so much more now." And I said, "That's a good question, because that's what my wife asked me more than 6.5 years prior." But it's a sacrifice, and I admire the judiciary. I admire those that are involved in public service. I cherished every moment that I was a member of the judiciary, and I miss it. In fact, every day when I'm at work, it reminds me of how much I miss the judiciary. And when I go to the courthouse for a hearing, or I see someone in town that's a member of the courthouse staff, people that I worked with, whether it's administrators, clerks, people that work with probation, law enforcement, they'll say, "We miss you. When are you coming back?" And I would like to go back, but my familial obligations are paramount to any obligation I owe to the public. And it's just a shame that I'm a casualty of the system, because we do have a great judiciary. They're grossly underpaid, and at times it is somewhat frustrating when you have cases that are pending and you have attorneys in your court that are appearing before you. And I don't know if this is selfish or not, but you know you're the lowest paid person in the room. But you may not be the most inadequate. But I applaud this commission. I'm familiar with your mission statement, and I applaud your efforts to persuade our legislature to increase the compensation for our judges. Because when you compare the salaries that our judges receive to those of other states, it's just not right. And I think our judiciary is superior to any judiciary in the country, and they should be compensated as such. And I don't know how you can effectively attract qualified attorneys to serve in a judicial capacity at the rate of pay that exists at this time. And it's just the reality of the situation. But I appreciate having the opportunity to appear before you today. I'm hopeful, as I said, that someday, finances permitting, that I can return. And one other point that I'd like to address, and that I don't think it's been addressed by anyone yet, is retirement. Because that was another issue and another decision on my part that factored into my decision to resign. Under the current system, at least with my age group, it would require 12 years of service to even vest in the retirement system. I got about halfway there, a little over halfway there, and when I would explain to those that were interested in seeking the position, when they would discuss the retirement benefits with me, I told them, "Well, you have to serve at least 12 years. They go, "Well, I'm working at a place that with our 401k or our pension plan, it only takes 3 years to vest 100%. I go, "Well, that's not the way the state system is." So that is another turnoff to those that at least have confronted me about expressing interest in serving on the judiciary. And again, I appreciate the opportunity to address you, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that any member would like to present.
Thank you, Judge. Commission? Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much.
I had a card submitted with a question mark, maybe. The senior and former judges of Texas, yes. Guess that's a for sure.
Good morning, members of the Commission. My name is Nathan White. I am a retired senior judge. Not too much younger than Judge Shepard's father. Disturbed me there. I'm from McKinney, Collin County, and I served as the first judge of the 366th Judicial District Court in Collin County for 17 years, and I've served now as an assigned judge or a senior judge for the last 6 years. A little background, I served as county judge in Collin County beginning in 1974, and so I have been on the taxing end and budget balancing aspect of county government just as much as I have served, or almost as much as I served as a judicial officer. I am representing the retired senior and former judges of the state, and wanted to make you aware of this portion of the judiciary that falls into that category. You know, they say retirement is when you know all the answers, but people quit asking you the questions. And several of you, when you were introducing yourself, indicated that you were retired, and so maybe you can relate to that. But just as you are not used up and are fortunately being asked to participate in the workings of our government, likewise, senior and former judges are called upon, and Mr. Harwell particularly, I wanted to address the point that you raised. We fill in the gaps. We have 2 courts in Collin County at the moment without active judges, and so if it were not for assigned judges who are available, willing, and so forth to serve in that capacity, we would be hurting for sure, because Collin County is a very fast-growing county. It's just as the state of Texas is fast-growing, and the legislature is not creating new courts commensurate with the growth of the state. And so if it were not for this expandable, perhaps retired judge body there, we really would have considerable backlogs that we don't otherwise have. Although we are not directly affected by the compensation for active judges, I'm here certainly to support our younger brothers and sisters in the judiciary in their need for additional compensation and for your desire perhaps to make that available. We are indirectly affected because we do receive compensation when we serve as an assigned judge. And so I just want to make you aware of this group that has the knowledge, that has the experience, that is called upon each and every day to serve when judges are unavailable or we have the gaps in these courts that are created, the vacancies for which were created either by death, resignation, or otherwise. And so if there are any questions that you might have of me, I certainly would be glad to respond.
Thank you, Judge. Any? Thank you very much.
Right.
Appreciate you coming today. Thank you. Do I have any other judges or representatives of judges groups who would like to testify who have not thus far? Thanks to all of you that have come, judges, and we have a number of cards from individuals and from associations and groups that we'll turn to next. The first person I'd like to ask come forward is Mr. Reynolds. And I blinked when I saw you come through the door. Welcome, albeit you're on a different side of the dais today. Thanks for coming.
Chairman Slack, members. Good to see you all. Hi, David. Nice to see you. Carl Reynolds, former director of OCA and staff for this commission. Nice to see you too, Mena. Mena and I were talking about whether I would make it today. Just a couple things. I spent some time looking back at your 2010 report, and I think someone else mentioned that there's a lot of great stuff there. I looked at all the letters that were provided at the end, and if there's anyone who doesn't, I see Judge Woodward here, and I've seen some people that have appeared twice, but I would encourage you to incorporate a lot of the material from that report in your next report, because there's just some great stuff. You've heard from some of the really terrific judges in Texas here this morning. I haven't heard all the testimony, but we just have a terrific judiciary, and I've had the opportunity to see judges all over the country, and the former Judge spoke was correct, that this is one of them. It's just an outstanding crop of judges, and we want to keep it that way. Also, when I looked at the 2010 report, the reason I was looking at it was because of the memo that I provided to Angela back in 2009, I think, that encouraged you to ask the legislature to dissolve the linkage between their retirement package and judicial salaries. I still think that's an important point to bring forward. I don't know if anyone mentioned that earlier in the testimony, but I do think that's something that we need to try to get the legislature to fix. It's an awkward, and once it's in place, it's an awkward thing to undo.
We may, for the benefit of those present, remind everyone that for every dollar of judicial increase, you recall the ratio, but we have there's a multiplier.
Yeah, I don't recall
because of the linkage.
I don't recall the math.
It's in our report. I'll find it, but it basically creates a multiplier so that for us to create a dollar raise for a district judge or intermediate or Supreme Court judge, there's an associated amount of increase that statutorily must occur.
Right.
For other people.
Correct.
Non-judiciary.
Right. And the final thing I want to say is that I think that it's your responsibility to take a look at all this, to synthesize this testimony that you've heard, and hopefully this will be a practice run for a lot of these folks. I really hope that there's a decent hearing on this issue, and that Hank, who's in the audience, can help us make sure that some key members of the legislature hear the kind of testimony that you all heard here today. It's fantastic that you all had an opportunity to see that, and I was just glad to be in the room to hear some of these comments. But I really want some key members of the legislature to hear it as well. But we need to, David and I will try to help. We need to work on how this happens, on the source of funding for this, and try to make more sense out of our court costs and fee system as we tried to launch before I left. And in the process of doing that, make sure that judicial compensation is where it needs to be, but be sensitive about. I was talking to someone earlier this morning at the Indigent Defense Commission, and I mentioned I was coming over here, and he said, "Oh, are they going to raise fees on poor criminals again to pay judges' salaries?" And that was what reminded me to mention to you all, and not so much to you all. I don't think it's your responsibility to come up with a funding mechanism, and I don't think you should have to do that. But people like David are going to get caught in the middle of all that, and we're going to have to try to come up with a mechanism that, as Judge Evans suggested, something that is set in place and that happens repeatedly without the need for strong-arming people. And the judiciary is one of the court cases, the New York court case alludes, the judiciary has to depend on the goodwill of the legislative branch. They have the ability to choke off the functioning of the judicial system and impair judicial independence by not funding salaries and a lot of other things. And the judiciary is dependent, so we need to go with the right attitude to the legislature and see that they honor that good faith.
I believe that if we're fortunate and there is a bill filed in this and the bill gets public hearing in a committee someplace in this building, perhaps even in this room,
right?
It will put the question of funding front and center. So I think the commissioner should anticipate, as well as any judges and others who may come testify, as to how the funding does occur. I know that in my meetings with individual elected members over the last 4 or 5 years, the funding question does come up. So I think the commission would welcome input as we approach the session on those types of things. And certainly there are implications with funding when you get into discussions of imposing it on litigants or participants in terms of the affecting the access to justice.
Right.
And that's obviously a concern. I would want to mention something, given your perspective, Carl, on not only judicial compensation, but the functioning of the judiciary in the various states, sister states. Judge Shepard mentioned Californians, and I had the unfortunate circumstance, good fortune, to be in Los Angeles Superior Court downtown LA. The unfortunate circumstance that court was convening only 2 days a week, and at the time the judge estimated that doing the piecemeal that the judge would have to do for the jury selection in the various cases, depending on that docket, would take approximately 6 weeks to accomplish something that in a district court in Texas would be done in a day or less. And we certainly don't want to see ourselves get to that point.
Right.
But that's probably, I don't know if it is the worst case scenario, but it's certainly a bad scenario for the judiciary.
Yeah, and I think some other states have been harder hit, and it's a strange circumstance because states where they have a more unified judicial system, sometimes that's kind of the worst case scenario when you have a budget situation, because you can't rely on a bunch of different counties to individually step up and keep things afloat. So some of the states like California, where the ripple effects from state budget cuts have gotten straight to operations at the trial court level. Here in Texas, we don't see that as much, but I think that, obviously the state government and all the county governments that I've touched have been in dire straits. So
I think it's something as a commission, while it may not directly affect compensation, is something that we should keep in mind, because there are circumstances around the country that are very dire in terms of access to justice, and that's a great concern of mine.
Yeah, and David has, I think, a lot of contact with his colleagues around the country in the National Association for Court Management, and can attest to that as well.
Very good. Any other questions for Mr. Reynolds?
Good to see you all. Thank you.
Likewise. Thanks for coming. Ms. Dickey. And which hat might you be wearing today?
Lots of hats.
Lots of hats.
My name is Martha Dickey, and I have never been a judge. So I bring a completely different perspective. What I have been was I had the honor to be president of the state bar, and I'm here today to speak on behalf of the 90,000 lawyers in this state, which is a little different perspective. I'm appreciative of what this commission does, and for those behind me, all the judges and people that are involved in this, I'm deeply appreciative as a lawyer of the sacrifices that they make to come into the system and run our system. I echo what everyone has said in terms of all the fine details of the sacrifices, the economic disconnect, the need to have highly qualified judges. And I'm not going to repeat all of that because I just echo what they say. But I will tell you, and this is perhaps just my therapy, but I've taken to driving around in my car listening to books on tape, and I've been listening to one on the history of the American Revolution, the history of the Constitution, and most recently about the War of the Roses, weirdly, in England. And I think if we step back, and I think it's really important to, for a moment, get out of the details and talk about that if you examine history, both in the past and what's happening right now, that the thing we have, I think, to be proudest of in this country is our third branch of government. And the other two branches of government, and I don't mean to insult them because I have many friends there, seem to, as we all know, it's the judiciary is like some little department that they fund at 1% of the state budget. And I don't think that in what y'all do, and you may uninvite me from coming to talk to the legislature, but I think it's important to be a little bit in people's faces about the lack of respect that is paid to this branch of government. And the 90,000 lawyers are part of the third branch of government. We're licensed by the third branch of government. We're an integral part of it. And I think it's really important to remind people that would beat their chests and wave their flags that what sets us aside, both in the past, from history, and presently, what sets us aside is the independence of our judiciary, the functioning of our judiciary, the due process that we're trying to get, and give, and how critically important that is. And, your report is great in terms of the details, which y'all are all more familiar with. But that sort of 90,000-foot perspective of how important this branch of government is and what we're doing to these people that are willing to step up and engage in public service, not just economically, frankly, because as one of the judges testified, probably 5% even wouldn't do it, probably 10% wouldn't do it. It's not going to even up the equities. But at some point, public service becomes too hard and too insulting when these judges for the last 7 years have not gotten any pay raise, their dockets have gotten larger, they're a critical part of our democracy, and at some point it's not just economically insulting in terms of them paying for their kids to go to college or what they do, it's just plain insulting. It's just, you're not affording the respect that I think is due to, in my view, the most important part of our government. I don't know how one puts that in this report without pissing them off or insulting the executives and insulting the legislature, but somebody needs to say those things, which is, if you're going to wrap yourself in the flag, if you're going to talk about what a great country this is, then you can't just ignore this branch of government, insult it, underfund it, and expect these people, these good people that today, with probably nobody really compensating them to be here, have shown up to let this commission, the legislature, and the world know how important this issue is. So it's an emotional soapbox issue with me. I think it is with many lawyers, which is the third branch of government matters, and we're insulting it at this point. And it is, we will come, I will bring the lawyers, I will come back, we'll do whatever it takes, but it needs to be said that what sets us apart is a functioning, free, independent judiciary, and there are so many places in the world where that's not happening. And that's something, that's a beacon that we should be carrying, and it's something that we should say loudly and proudly. So I have this list of all these things Caitlin told me to say, this wonderful script, and as usual, I've gone off script. But I think it's really important for somebody outside the judiciary to step up and on an emotional basis say, somebody needs to get in their face and say, we've got to do the right thing. If you're going to keep these qualified people on the bench dispensing justice, don't insult them, and that's what we're doing right now. And I hope I haven't insulted any of you, but that's really the way I feel, and I know it's the way the lawyers feel. And, if you don't want to say it in your report, I'll come back and insult them. But that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Martha. Just to underscore, the report is the only, and Martha's right, this probably should be said more strongly, but the report is the only way the Commission can speak other than individual commissioners speaking personally with elected members. But if a bill is filed, and perhaps some of those numbers of lawyers can get engaged and speak to their elected members. I know Bar Association has limits on what it can do, but your members certainly can speak to elected members about providing an opportunity for you to come speak, as you just did, to the elected officials along with the judges. So until we see that bill, until that bill is filed, it will be this report in whatever lame form it is.
Please don't take that.
But I'm joking with you, of course. But to get to advance this to a true public discourse, we need a bill. So thanks for coming. Carol Sims.
Mr. Chairman and members, thank you for having me here today. I'm Carol Sims. I'm the Executive Director of the Texas Civil Justice League. For those of you not familiar with our organization, we were founded in 1986 and we're the first state legal reform organization in the country. We have hundreds of members ranging from businesses of all sizes, Fortune 100, all the way down, healthcare providers, dozens of state and trade professional associations, and individuals. And at the very heart of our mission from day one has been the judiciary. And most of what I had to say, of course, has been covered here today, the burden on the judges that serve as our most dedicated public servants. It's no secret that the process is certainly doesn't work in their favor. So I'll just cover a couple of things just real briefly that have been touched on but not really discussed, is the connection to the legislative retirement system. And when this system was set up in the 70s, I think that presumably the legislature at the time thought that the judges would be afforded regular, appropriate pay raises. And, of course, we've seen that it didn't work that way, and those raises have come few and far between, 8 years, 10 years. And it always requires a new piece of legislation to make this happen. And for that reason, every time they review judicial increases, it leads to negative press and the public perception that the legislature is acting to increase their own retirement benefits. And, of course, that creates a dynamic that just doesn't work well. So with that in mind, we would urge y'all to consider taking a strong look at the connection to legislative retirement and also consider proposing a system that does not require a new piece of legislation every session for the judges to get an appropriate review of their compensation package, because it's clear it's not even keeping up with the cost of living. It's just getting further and further behind. And also to let y'all know that our organization and a couple others like us are willing and ready to help any way we can. We are not an organization of lawyers. We're not an organization of judges. We can take very strong positions. We have the foot soldiers to help, and we can say things the judges can't say. And so with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions, but we are ready and willing to help, and we appreciate what y'all are doing.
Would your association, in conjunction with other groups represented here today, be willing to assist in identifying, recruiting, and cajoling bill sponsors?
Absolutely. No question.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Ledbetter.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Junie Ledbetter. I'm on the Board of Directors of an organization called Texas Association of Defense Counsel, which is an organization comprised of approximately 2,000 lawyers. We are a lawyer organization here in the state of Texas. All are civil lawyers, and they engage in a practice that is primarily not plaintiff's civil work. Nearly everything that we have outlined as part of our program has already been discussed this morning. We would echo that we recognize the sacrifice. We certainly recognize that there is the tie-in between the judge's salary and the legislative retirement. We recognize that this is a very tricky issue and likely to cause likely to offend some people to get involved in this fight, but we have long supported a separation of those two systems. We are still maintaining that position. We are here to assist. We thank the judges for all that they do, and we thank you for what you are doing. And we are certainly available. We have members to help and do help at every legislative session. We just need to know what you need.
And thank you to the TADC commissioners. You may recall I have a copy of their written submission, right. But from prior meetings and biennium, they have a resolution from that organization in support of judicial pay raise. So thank you for the resolution. We appreciate that. And same question that I asked previously, will you help us with bill sponsors?
As we have for many years, yes.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Trevor Taylor.
Commission members. My name is, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission, my name is Trevor Taylor. I am the past president of the Capital Area Trial Lawyers. I'm a member of the Board of Directors of the Texas Trial Lawyers Association. I'm here today on behalf of the Texas Trial Lawyers Association. I appreciate, Mr. Chairman, not having me go after Martha Dickey. But I want to echo something that Martha said, and something really that Judge Evans brought up early in the testimony. Justice delayed is really justice denied. It's true on the plaintiff side of the docket, people that are injured that can't get their lives back together if the docket is slowed. It's true on the other side of the docket, business owners that can't go back to work, that are pulled away from their business, that can't go back to work while cases are pending in the system. And Chairman Slake, you brought up the point that, and we hear time and again, that in a down economy, in a tough economy, is this really the time for judicial pay raises? It is precisely, I think, as others have said, at this time that you really do need sensitive, competent, qualified judges to be hearing our cases, because it's precisely during these times that you see an increase in foreclosure rates, you see an increase in divorce rates. There are problems that are throughout our communities that need not just any judge, but the able judges that we have in our communities that are able to listen to our clients and understand what they need and to hear them. And I've won cases, I've lost cases, and even the hardest losses I've ever had, my clients have come back to me and said, well, at least I was heard. And that's what separates our democracy from governments around the world, is we have this safety valve in our system, the judicial branch of government, that's where you're not appealing to the king, you're not asking for special dispensation and the politics that are involved, but you can be heard. You can be heard locally. And you can have your cases adjusted by and heard locally. And it takes there's a quantum difference between qualified and unqualified judges, and judges that have the sensitivity, a special sensitivity to understand these cases. And it's precisely at this point that we need to turn our attention to retaining them and recruiting them. I've read your report, and and I think the association applauds, the Trial Lawyers Association applauds your efforts. In the past, the past report came out with just a modest 5 to 10% increase in judicial salaries. Wasn't acted on by the legislature, and I think the case for judicial pay raises in the interim in the last 2 years has only improved. The most recent annual report, the 2011 annual report report from the judiciary shows Texas is lagging the 5 most populous states in judicial salaries, judicial turnover. There was the 2011 report, which I thought was telling, asked not just was this a factor for judges' salary, a factor for judges that voluntarily left, but it asked the next question, what would change your mind? For those that voluntarily left, what would change your mind? And 43% said a change in salary. So we know, that sort of closes the circle on some of the data you produced in your 2010 report, but closes the circle. We now know that at least for 43% that responded to this survey, that an increase in judicial pay is going to make a difference and going to keep them here. Finally, your report, I think and you've heard this thing, you heard it back in 2010, it's been amplified today. The judiciary ought to be a family-friendly environment. It ought to be friendly when you go in as a litigant. It ought to be friendly to the judges that are there. And in the past report, I think your report has tracked the rate of inflation, Consumer Price Index. That's a general index, but those of us who have kids in college, those of us who are saving for kids in college, know there's a different inflationary index for schools. It's at least the rule of thumb is about twice the rate of inflation. So that's a special pressure. You're hearing time and again from judges, people that we need to retain, a consideration you hear time and again, and the rate of inflation for the Consumer Price Index, I don't think captures it. There are bigger pressures, the college pressure, and the ability of our judges with their fixed salaries to keep up is something that we need to be sensitive to, and in keeping a family-friendly environment, that ought to be one thing that the Commission bears in mind. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. We support the important work you all are doing, and I'll take any questions you have.
I assume your answer is the same as your predecessors. You will help us recruit a bill sponsor?
We are prepared to assist the Commission any way you ask.
I know that you and TADC and the other groups are always looking for ways to work together and appear with on the same side of an issue. This seems to be one.
This is.
So, great. Thank you, Trevor. Randy Howery.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Randy Howery. I'm a trial lawyer here in Austin, and today I represent TexABOTA, which is the Texas chapter of the American Board of Trial Advocates. And we call it ABOTA. And I'm a member of the Austin chapter and the Texas organization. ABOTA is in a unique position, and I think it picks up on the point you just made, Mr. Slack, which is that our organization is an organization of trial lawyers, but it's composed of plaintiffs' lawyers and defense lawyers, Republicans and defendants, and Democrats, but not all defendants. Yeah, it's a misstatement there. Republicans and Democrats.
And this is Webcast.
That's right. We're, as I said, in a unique position because we understand what it takes to fight issues like this and to address one of your issues right up front. A TexABOTA organization is willing to do whatever it takes to help on this issue. We count among our members, even members of the local judiciary. We understand that in order for the judicial process to work, and that's really the purpose of our organization, is to preserve, protect, and defend the right to a jury trial. And we understand in our organization that in order for that process to work, we have to have competent, well-qualified members of the judiciary, and we are fortunate enough to have that here in Austin, Texas, in Travis County. I can tell you that to become a member of our organization, you have to be experienced. You have to practice a certain number of years. You have to be qualified based on your experience in trying lawsuits. And we are the typical group that one might find candidates to serve in this important role of the judiciary. And as I said, we have members of the judiciary that are part of our group. And I know, and I can't speak for every member of our group and to tell you why they may make the decision to serve in the judiciary or not serve. I can tell you in conversations that I've had in my own particular circumstance, and to pick up on the theme we heard from the judges today, as trial lawyers, and we serve every day walking over to the courthouse fighting for the rights of our clients. But I can tell you for many of us, and myself included, that the issue of compensation for judges is the issue that for many of us is paramount when we kind of go through this process and we talk among ourselves. And I think most lawyers at some point in time in their career will go through the evaluation of, do I want to ever be part of the judiciary? Do I want to run for that office to be part of that esteemed group? And for many of us, myself included, that decision ultimately comes down to separate apart from temperament and skill and the ability to do what our judges do, which disqualifies me, by the way. But the issue ultimately comes down to how much am I going to make as a judge, and can we support our families on that? And for many of us, it's the deciding factor in terms of whether we go in this direction. So I just echo what you've heard from some of these judges. To be honest with you, as I think about this process, and we know what judges make, and we know they don't make them enough, we know that they're grossly underpaid like teachers, but I'm blown away to think of the consequences and the fact that we lose judges like Judge Snipes and we Judge Trotter out of Ector County, and those folks that are willing to take this step and to make those sacrifices that can't afford to raise their families. And I'm just blown away when I hear that today. It compels me even more to hope that our organization can be an advocate for judges here. And so, Martha Sue Dickey, as former president of the State Bar, can really rally the troops, and she should be engaged in this process. I'm here today to offer that our group, Texabota, stands ready, willing, and able to help you as well, and we want to take on this cause and fight for our judges in any way we can.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. Commissioner? Those are all the cards that I have. Are there any other persons present that would like to give testimony today? Commissioners, any comments or statements you'd like to make?
Excuse me for coming in at the end of the chair's introductions this morning. By way of introduction, my name is Dane Philippi. I'm an attorney in Austin. I just wanted to thank everybody for their service, especially the judges in the audience. And as an Iraq War veteran myself, I'd like to thank Judge Snipes for what you're doing. I think of all the comments were very illustrative of what we need to communicate. And Judge Snipes, what you're doing with the veterans, personal thanks to you, but if that doesn't communicate what's going on, I don't know what will. But thank you for being here.
Yes, sir. Mr. Jenkins.
Yeah, I just want to say, as a small business owner, non-attorney, non-judge, I really appreciate the personal testimony that I've heard today, because when I've looked at reports and I look at statistics and how much judges make in other states and compared to Texas, the personal testimony that you put on it really added value to what we're trying to do. And I just want to let you know that I'm personally committed to doing whatever it takes to get that change for you guys. I really do have a better, it just eliminates the paperwork that we read by hearing the personal stories of sacrifice. And I just want to commend you all. There's no value that you can put on your public service and your commitment and your sacrifice. And I just want to tell you that I appreciate it very much. And I also want to take this time, I was surprised I didn't hear from her. I live in Dallas County, and Chief Justice Carolyn Wright from the 5th Circuit Court of Appeals in Dallas County, I do want to acknowledge your presence for being here today, ma'am.
Thank you for all of the hard work of the commission. Appreciate it.
I was trying to tempt her into getting up there, but she just wouldn't take it. Thank you, Judge. We have several judges present in support today who may not have given testimony, given prior testimony, so thank you very much for your continued hard work. And I have to say that I think it's certainly my impression from the prior public comment meeting that we had 2 years ago is that there is a palpable feeling of urgency that I detected today. I probably started it with my comments, but I appreciate the sincerity and sense of commitment and urgency that I heard from the judges as well as the groups that spoke. And certainly Martha Dickey did nothing to temper that today. So thank you, Martha, and the State Bar. If there are no other comments, no other persons here to present testimony, I'll take a motion on adjournment. So moved. Mr. Jenkins moves. Mr. Harwell seconds. So moved. All in favor? Aye. This committee meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.